Now this works fine. We know that things are working okay in our weather service. Now let's go ahead and start putting together all the helper methods and functions so that we can actually start putting together the whole logic behind the scenes, if you will, to get this information here. All right, so let's go back to our weather service here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a private. This one is going to be JSON array type. Why? Because I'm going to go ahead and fetch this array here, right? Weather, which contains one object here. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. That's why this method will return a JSON array. Okay, so I'm going to say JSON array. I'm going to say return weather array of such. For now, I'm going to just go ahead and pass a string. You'll see in a second why here. I'm going to call name. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to say JSON object. I'm going to say JSON object is equal to, I'm going to call our get weather, because this is the indeed the whole object here, right? So I'm going to call that and pass it inside of this object here, JSON object. I'm going to say get weather. I'm going to pass the name that's been passed, right, in our return weather array here. And I'm going to say dot get JSON array. And I have to pass the name here, which is going to be weather, like that. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to the top, get the whole object, JSON object, and then I'm saying I just want to go ahead and get this weather array object here, JSON array object. That's what we're doing. But in order for us to access this weather, you notice it's enclosed inside of this parent object. That's why we have to get this parent object first and then get this weather array, JSON array. That's what we're doing here. Okay. Let me go ahead and add signature to the method. This has to be JSON array, of course. I said it and I didn't really do it. All right, so now this means that this JSON object, in fact, let's call this JSON array, will have, how about weather JSON array? Better. So our weather JSON array now will have this JSON array, which contains this object here. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and say return our weather JSON array. What this will do now is when we go to our main activity here, we can actually get rid of that. And what we can do, I can go ahead and say, for instance, I can say JSON array again. So JSON array is equal to, I can call our service. I'm going to say weather service again, but instead of the get weather, I'm going to say get. There's the problem. I made this private. This has to be public. All right, let's go back. We should be able to see now. There we go. Return weather array. So if you pass again, say Mumbai, like such, then we know that our JSON array, right, will have this weather JSON array, which in this case is going to be this JSON array object. Okay, but now we're interested, for instance, to get main, description, or icon, or even ID. You know, for us to do that, we have to probe in, which means we have to create a JSON object this time around to be able to get all these properties. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go back to main here. What we can do, we can say for, because we know again is an array, just in case, because we know that this array only contains one index or one item, but we don't know that for sure. So it's always safe to do a for loop in order for us to get, because say if indeed they end up having another object inside here and we hard-coded it, the array to 0 index, then we will have problem. So what are we going to do? We're going to do the right way. I'm going to say for, I'm going to say int I is equal to 0, I is less than JSON array.length, say I plus plus, such. And then here I'm going to create a JSON object, again, because I need to probe get this JSON object here. Okay, Okay, let's say JSON object. I'm going to call this weather object. Let's say is equal to what? Well, is it going to be equal to JSON array? Let's say .get JSON. I'm going to pass here the index, which is I. Okay, now this weather object here refers to this object. This. Nice. So now, because we're dealing with JSON objects, we can invoke main, description, icon, or ID to get the actual values. See the beauty here? So now if I go and say system.out println, I can say, for instance, ID. I can go ahead and say weather object dot get. Notice now I'm going to go ahead and get int. Right? I'm going to call this ID. Let's make sure, yep, it's an ID. And I can say plus. Let's add something else. Let's see what else we have. Main description. Say main. Can say again weather object dot get string. This time it's going to be main. And then we can go ahead and do the same with description. Again, weather object that get string. I'm gonna say description as such. And we can get an icon as well. But this will do. Let's save this and give it a run. With any luck, this should show us the results that we want. Alright, let's go ahead and localhost, refresh. You won't see anything here, but you should see here. There we go, ID 212, 211, main thunderstorm, description is thunderstorm. Exactly what we are getting here. Very, very nice. So you see now the power here of things that we are able to do because we fetched that JSON object, the whole thing now, the whole JSON payload here, and now we're probing inside of each object and parse or extract the information that we need. So this is just to show you how things work. So of course we're going to organize this way better. That way we'll be able to then fetch all this information easily. The next thing we are going to be interested in is going to be this main here, which is going to be temperature, pressure, humidity, min, temp max. Okay, so let's go ahead and create those classes as well. Here I'm going to go and do the same, say public. This time, let's see, is it going to be? Now this time is going to be an object, right? It's not an array, so let's call this JSON object. Let's just call this return. Let's say return main. It's not very descriptive, but it works. Let's say string, pass name again. So in this case here, what we're going to do, we're just going to go ahead and say JSON object again. It's going to be main object 2. I'm going to say get weather again, pass the name, say dot get JSON, and the string is going to be main, like this. Okay, now probably have to add a signature here so we don't run into issues. I'm going to say return JSON main object as such. Okay, and you can imagine that once we call this return main, let's say return main object, okay, this will indeed return all of this because we'll be able to probe in each one of these individually. And I know you trust me, and if you want, you can test yourself. You can go back to main here and do exactly what we did, or maybe a little bit simpler, right? Because now we can go ahead here, for instance, and say JSON object, say my object, as an example, I'm going to say is equal to weather service dot return main, pass here Mumbai again, for instance, and because I know this is just a simple object, right, a straight object, I can just go ahead and get this stuff. It's not an array anymore, and I can just go ahead and say system. In fact, let's go ahead and copy all of this at the top here. I can say my object dot get string. What do we want to get? Let's actually it's going to be get. Let's get long because this is going to be a bigger number. Say pressure. Let's try pressure. So say get long, right? It's going to be pressure as such. If you save, stop and save, let's run this. We should see 10:07 if all goes well. Let's refresh. And it says ID 10:07. It's not an ID, of course, but that doesn't matter. I just want to show you that we are indeed making progress here and it's working. So we're able to fetch each individual item here. And of course, if you want, in fact, it would be a good exercise, as always. The teacher of me wants you to do a lot of exercises. Go ahead and fetch the temp, pressure, humidity, temp min, temp max. Play around, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is get the wind. Right, let's go ahead and get the wind. You probably guessed it. So take a few minutes and create another method here, just like what we did here, that will return this object here, wind. Very confident that you'll be able to do that. Okay, go ahead and do that. All right, I believe you were able to manage that. Okay, and here's results. We say public again. In this case, going to be still be JSON object. I'm going to say wind. Let's call this return wind object. Pass string name. And this is going to be JSON object. I'm going to call this wind object is equal to, let's say get weather again. We pass the name. That get JSON, and it's gonna be wind like this. And of course, as always, we need to go ahead and add an exception here. Got the signature. Okay, gonna return wind object. That's it. Okay, we know this will work, right? If you want to probe in, you can get speed and degrees. Now these will be probably floats or doubles, right? When you get them. Because you can see they have .503 or .06. Okay, I'll go with doubles, right? Very nice. So we're making progress here. The next thing we're going to get is create a method that will get this system here, which really we just want the sunrise and the sunset. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. Let's make sure what is it. It's going to be an object again. Go ahead and say public JSON object return sunset. Just say return sunset such string name. Okay, you're probably getting really used to this, which is good. JSON object, I'm gonna call sun object. I'm gonna say get weather, pass the name, say gets string ID or string object gets JSON object, and it's going to be sys. Right, good. That's the name of our node here. Very good. And again, we have to add a signature there. Let's say return. In this case, it's going to return our sun object. Very good. Okay, and anything else we would want here, for instance, if we want to get base, we can easily do that. But at least the basics is already done. We'll be able to create the services and the methods that will just help us to do to retrieve all that information fast, real quick. All right, so we're making good progress here. The next video, we are going to start putting together the user interface, because now we started with getting the logic set up, everything set up. Next thing, we're going to look at beautifying, making the actual user interface. Users can add the city and hit enter, and then they will be able to see the weather at their city. Okay, perfect. I'll see you in the next video.